Hey all, Bree from the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I have got a gift for you this holiday season. If you love the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I mean love the No Guilt Mom podcast, then tell us about it. Leave us a review, and you can be entered to win a No Guilt Mom gift card. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and then simply go to noguiltmom.com/review to enter our giveaway for a free No Guilt Mom gift card, simply for telling us what you think about the podcast. It is amazing. But don't delay. Get right on this, as we're going to be giving away that No Guilt Mom gift card on December 21st. So get right on over and visit noguiltmom.com/review.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crone, and I am joined here by my hardworking co-host, Bree Tucker.
Hello, hello. How is everybody doing?
And I can say from working 6 feet away from Bree that she is extremely hardworking. So that is the perfect adjective for you today.
Not nearly as much as you, but
you want to discount your positive adjectives, but they're totally true.
You're right. I need to be more open to the positive, right? I just read a meme that said like positive thoughts for the day. You fell down the stairs. Well, I got down the stairs real quickly.
That is a positive thought. It's funny because the way I look at life, anytime I make a mistake or have a big accident like that, like I'm extremely accident prone, I just laugh about it.
You kind of have to sometimes. I'm like that too. Like I have a thing of, I don't know. It's my problem is electronics, which I find funny because we were just having technical issues.
I have a
thing about me, like some electromagnetic fields that breaks things a lot.
I don't think that's true.
It could be.
That's like everyone who says that they're horrible at tech. And really, I'm sorry if I offend anyone here, but really you're not horrible at tech. You just have not tried enough tech and be willing to fail multiple times.
True. You are our tech guru here.
Well, tech is like a demanding force and it'll beat you down every single time. And you just have to get up and keep going.
It is. It is very intimidating. Very much so. But hey, interesting. Kind of leads us into today's episode.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke with Ned Johnson of the Self-Driven Child, which it just right there, like we're talking about not giving up,
motivation,
continuing on with things, right? Perseverance,
yes, and how we can help our kids do the same.
Yes, and I have to say it was a hilarious interview from the get-go.
I think our whole interview was really the model of perseverance. Because first Ned is like so much fun. Like we enjoyed him so much.
Yes. Well, we knew we were going to, right? Because I before the podcast, I always have to send out like a little info packet to them, and I ask them for a picture so that I can work on the cover art. And he sends back his headshot of him making an interesting face while drinking some coffee, and I'm like, I like laughed out loud when I saw it. I'm like, this is going to be a good interview. I can tell.
Yeah, and it was a good interview because first it started out, and Ned was recording in his bathroom.
Right. It was the only place in his house that he could have quiet and be away from everybody who was online learning
because COVID times. And then we had the most interruptions of any interview that we've ever had. Like my dog was in the house, and also the woman who comes and cleans my house, Beth, she was in the house, and a pest control exterminator came by as well. So we were talking with Ned on screen, and my dog, Addie, she's always in the room with us. She heard something at the door and just gave this really loud bark.
Right.
And Ned started laughing on the other end. He's like, you guys should have seen how far you both jumped out of your chairs.
Well, because she's a big dog. Addie's she is totally our little mascot for the podcast. For No Guilt Mom in general, she is our little mascot. And it was just, we weren't expecting it. And then it happened again.
And she barked again. And it was Beth at the door saying that the exterminator was there. And so at that point I had it, and I was like, Addie, you are going in your crate. And so I was taking her in her crate in the other room, and I had my AirPods in, which I listened into the interview. And
so you can hear us talking?
I could hear you talking. And I'm putting Addie in the crate, and I hear Ned being like, oh, there's the pest control guy right there. And the pest control guy had come into the office and was like spraying around all the corners of the room during this interview.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those joys of having a home office kind of situation, for sure.
Oh, I'm just like,
but he was with
laughing.
Kept it going. And even then, like, I think we talk about too in the episode, it was right before my birthday.
Yeah.
So like we're going out to lunch and he's like, what is, the restaurant had a weird name. And
Sicilian Butcher.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what a Sicilian Butcher is, but I'm hoping it's good. So it was
one of the few outdoor, really nice patios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a really fun interview.
It was a really fun interview.
I'm hoping you guys love it as much as we do.
So a little background on Ned. He's the co-author of The Self-Driven Child with Dr. William Stixrud. And in his day job, he's the president and he calls himself Tutor Geek of Prep Matters, which he describes as helping kids battle an alphabet of sinister standardized tests.
Yes. That's very much a good description there.
In addition, Ned helps parents adopt a new way of thinking and employs tools to support their kids' autonomy, vital to helping kids lower their stress and develop intrinsic motivation.
Yes, which is why we love him so much.
Yes, we hope you enjoy, as much as we did, our interview with Ned.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Did you know it's Joanne's birthday this week?
It is. And I am a firm believer in the birthday week celebration instead of it being just a day. So we're doing a whole week of deals for you.
That's right. And guess what today's deal is? Drum roll.
The Sibling Adventure Pack. So here's what you need to do. To make sure you're in on the festivities, use the link in our show notes to download the No Guilt Mom mindset and join our No Guilt Mom community.
And if they're already in our No Guilt Mom community, they've already been receiving the emails, haven't they?
Yes, they have. So don't miss out and help me celebrate my birthday by letting me give you a gift. So be on the lookout for all the birthday week celebrations and let's get on with the show. You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom Podcast. Hi, Ned. Thank you so much for joining us on the No Guilt Mom podcast. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me. What a great show and what fun to be with you guys.
We've already, I feel, had fun this morning. Like I had to tell Bree to stop talking until I pressed record because it just we got to get the good stuff. But for those people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you give us an introduction?
Sure. In my day job, I'm a test prep geek. I help students prepare for battle against an alphabet of standardized tests of SAT and ACT, blah, 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 blah. Outside of that, I'm a parent of a son who's a freshman in college and a junior high school daughter. And I am the co-author with Dr. William Stixrud of a book called The Self-Driven Child, The Science and Sense of Giving Your Kids More Control Over Their Lives.
Which we are all about here at the No Guilt Mom podcast on how we can create self-motivated kids that are motivated to do stuff on their own and rock the world, I guess, right?
There's a worthy goal for all of us to align behind.
So there was something you said in your intro, and I see it in all of your work on everything I've seen, and I'm very curious. What exactly is a self-proclaimed tutor geek?
Well, I decided a long while ago that it was probably a little bit better for me to make fun of myself a little bit and beat other people to the punch before they can do that. Part of it also, for a lot of people, these ridiculous tests are pretty stressful. They can feel pretty intense. And, as a guy who's been doing this since 1993, I'm arguably better than most people who kind of step in the room with me. And I really want to sort of be humble about this. I don't want to, Mr. Johnson, blah, blah, blah. If for no other reason from certainly what I know from science and more so from my experience, when people are stressed, they don't think as well as they can think. So all of my energy goes into how do I help kids have a lower sense of stress, and including feeling a sense of control, which of course is what our book is about.
Right. I think, and you know what? You do have a very calming presence.
Well, thank you.
It's very, very fun, very, very relaxed. I love it.
I love what you said about that kids and people in general can't perform to the level they're capable of when they are anxious and stressed. Because I know taking tests as a kid, I felt that stress, and I'm sure many, many kids feel stressed today when taking those high stakes tests. So something that we really found in the self-driven child that we'd like to talk to you about that we thought was very, very appropriate for 2020.
Very applicable.
Yeah. Is how situations that cause people stress usually have those 4 attributes that you refer to as nuts.
Oh yes, I'm glad if we don't feel nuts right now, I don't know when we will. Yeah, right? We got this from a wonderful researcher named Sonia Lupien up in Montreal. And she summarized, she said, you can summarize what makes people nuts with that acronym. So N is novelty, right? So the coronavirus, hey, not just the old run-of-the-mill coronavirus, it's, gosh darn it, the novel coronavirus. Yeah. Woo-hoo, right? U is unpredictability. Right. I mean, this is what makes traffic so hard. If you could tell me we're going to suffer through this COVID thing until the 15th of June 2021, okay, I could deal with that. But nobody knows, and it's really hard. Mm-hmm. T is threat, perceived threat, and frankly, until March 16th of this year, most of us didn't feel like we had an existential threat every time we walked outside the door. To your point, Joanne, for kids, that threat is often threat to ego. And so it's if I do poorly on this test, people will think I'm dumb. If I struggle reading out loud in second grade, everyone's snickering at me, and that threat to ego is really, really profound, particularly when kids become when they go through middle school and become adolescents. And then the last one is S, a low sense of control. And the research all shows that it's this low sense of control that is the most stressful thing you can possibly experience. We can handle those first 3, the novelty, the unpredictability, the threats, so long as we feel like there's something that we can do. And the easiest way for people to think about this is, as parents, if you got a note or a call or a text that your kid was gravely, something terrible had happened, and there's nothing you can do. You can't get there. I mean, you're out of your mind. Where if you feel like there's something that you can do, it may be really hard, but okay, we're gonna work the problem. We're gonna find a solution. We're gonna do what we need to do. And so much of our book is about what improves a sense of control for kids, because it's important for lowering their sense of stress, and it also turns out it's vital to developing a sense of motivation, right? Of intrinsic motivation, which we talked about before, of self-directed, self-driven kids.
Hey, Aubrey here, and I wanted to share one of my favorite gifts to give during the holiday season, a Storyworth book. It is the most amazing gift ever. Storyworth is an online service that lets you create a special and unique gift of someone's story. I've given Storyworth books to both of my parents, and it has been their favorite gift, hands down. And did I mention it is so easy? Storyworth emailed my parents questions every week that I handpicked from their massive list of questions that they have. All my parents had to do was open their email and answer them. That easy. I asked my dad questions like, did you have any rules that you set for yourself as a parent, which you immediately broke? And he did. I even asked both of my parents, are you more like your mom or your dad? And they shared a lot of really amazing qualities that I didn't know about my grandparents at the time. Then at the end of the year, Storyworth compiles all of their answers, puts them into this gorgeous book that covers everything. My parents love showing us their books, and I personally love getting a chance to read them. With Storyworth, I am giving those I love a thoughtful and personal gift from the heart that preserves their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/NGM and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/NGM to save $10 on your first purchase.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. It is so hard to raise kids who know how to manage money. Bree, right now, my kids are all about earning money for presents. My daughter wants to get presents for all of her friends, and my son is doing a Secret Santa with his friends.
Oh, I hear you. And if you're looking to raise kids that are financially responsible, we have got a lifesaver recommendation for you that you need to check out. It is Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families that gives kids and teens an easy and fun way to gain financial literacy, all while giving parents peace of mind.
You can send instant money transfers, automate allowance, and even keep an eye on kids' spending with real-time notifications. Meanwhile, your kids can begin their journey towards financial autonomy by learning how to save, invest, and spend wisely.
So sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/NGM.
That's greenlight.com/NGM to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/NGM.
So what could we do to help increase kids' sense of control, especially during this time or through schoolwork? Or, I mean, this is a very broad question. So go
ahead. Want to answer it right now?
Yeah,
in general?
Sure. Well, there are kind of two things to think about here. One, I should point out that when we talk about a sense of control, there are kind of two parts to this. One, it's the subjective sense of autonomy, that this is my life, that I have choices, It doesn't, by the way, mean that a kid is in charge of everything. We're not talking about putting a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old in charge of the household. That actually doesn't make him feel better. That stresses him out, because we don't want our kids to have a sense of control over things that are overwhelming to us. It's just that we don't want kids to not feel in control of things that they can handle themselves. So the sense of control is a sense of autonomy. And it's the brain state that supports this. Meaning, when we're in our right minds, our prefrontal cortex, all those executive functions, decision-making, planning, blah, 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 runs the rest of our brain, as opposed to the amygdala, the threat-detecting part of our brain. And so, Jen, this is when you were, as a kid, if you were taking a test and you stress, the amygdala flares and cortisol runs through your body, and your prefrontal cortex is overwhelmed with neurotransmitters, and it just kind of goes offline. It's supposed to, but you don't think very well. So my work, starting a long, long time ago, was trying to understand underperformance and then figure out what made a difference. And so things that helped kids feel more in control of the test and the preparation, and even things like sleep and exercise and mantras and music that psychs them up and, lucky clothes going to the test, these things increase their perception of being in control and help them be able to think better.
Oh, I like that.
We need those lucky socks.
We need those lucky socks.
We do.
Well,
we do.
It's so funny because just to reveal a little bit of my personal life. So I'm a big proponent of therapy, and I myself go to therapy, and I was just having this conversation about having those good things in your life, so that when you have a bad or stressful moment, you can kind of shift your thinking to those things. Like your socks, or for instance, my daughter, we were in the car ride going to school, and she gets stomach aches because she gets so anxious, especially about fire alarms. And she's like, I know the principal is going to have a fire alarm today. So she was really stressed out. And I asked her, I'm like, so I got this tip. Do you want to hear it? And she's like, okay, sure. I'm like, you just have to find something good that you can look at. And she's like, what? What do you mean? And I would point out these silly things, like your shoes. You love your shoes and you feel so silly doing it, but yet those things actually make you happy and calm you down. And they're not frivolous. They do something good.
Oh my God. Well, they certainly do. I mean, you can read all about the placebo. I have this one, it's a very fun article I wrote for Washington Post about how superstition helps. Right. And so this came out of a kid I was working with who was clinically anxious all the way through middle school. And to your point, figured out things that she could focus on that helped her do better, kind of in this case, navigating social situations. And she applied these tools then to standardized tests. And so I finally noticed that when she was coming to take her practice test, she wore the same darn clothes every time. So I asked her about it at one point, and she's like, oh yeah, she was a little sheepish. Here's the fun part. None of the clothes were hers. She had borrowed a sweatshirt from Joanne, right? And from Bree, her lucky sweatpants, right? I'm hoping that the underpants were hers, but everything else she basically swiped or borrowed or whatever, these clothes from her friends. So these clothes were all imbued with the love and affection and friendship, that you have with her friends. And she was putting on the armor. So it was like her 4 best friends were there with her taking this stupid test.
That's really
so
sweet.
amazing.
It's taking something borrowed to the test taking level.
So I think about your daughter with if you've got the fire alarm, right? Who's her ever best friend? Trade shirts. They're going to outgrow them anyway. So who cares, right? I got your shirt. You got my shirt.
There you go.
That's it. They wear uniforms, so you really wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
That's why the shoes were important, though, too. You can pick your shoes.
You can totally pick your shoes. No, I think like a lot of parents who have kids who show signs of anxiety. I mean, for instance, I think my kids, like I can see signs of anxiety in both of them, but I also know that I have trouble with anxiety and I'm affected by it. So what, like as a parent who struggles with anxiety, what can we do for our kids to kind of not repeat it, to like the buck stops here with the anxious behaviors?
Oh, golly, there's a lot to be said on that. Well, one thing, we have a chapter in the book called a non-anxious presence.
Yes.
And I wish we'd made up this term. We borrowed it. We're back to borrowing, not stealing, borrowing from a guy named Edwin Freeman. And he was a rabbi. He was a consultant. He worked with families and corporations and, churches and synagogues and blah, blah, blah. And he made the point that things go better when the person or people who are in charge are not overly reactive and they're not fear-mongering, because if you're in the presence of someone who's really stressed, their amygdala's firing, your amygdala will pick up on it as well. And your stress response, I don't know what the heck's going on, but it must be really bad because Bree's completely losing it. The right thing for me to do is to lose it too, right? And so this is important because our kids watch us all the time. Our kids watch us all the time, right? Because they've grown up watching our faces. And so obviously the more that we can be non-anxious in the presence of something going poorly, the better that's going to help. So, it's kind of put your own oxygen on first, right? For me, a couple things that help with that. One is always to take the long view, because really, there are very few things that little kids face that are actually, existential threats. And I imagine that a lot of the parents who are listening to your podcast are, middle school parents, for instance. And then this is where, social dynamics get harder and grades and everything can get a little bit wobbly. And it's so easy for us to fall into the trap of the kind of fortune-telling, myth that if my kid is having a sucky time now, that the rest of her life is just going to be the pits, right? If my kid's a C student, he's going to have a C life. And it just doesn't work out that way, in part because kids want their lives to be successful as well. Now, for Bill, who's a clinical neuropsychologist and spent 37 years helping kids who are struggling, and sees all these. He told me he got a Christmas card the other day from a parent. He saw all 4 kids, and he hadn't seen them for a decade. And the card simply said, "You were right. They all turned out great."
Oh, okay.
Right. But in the moment of it, it's so hard not to be super, scared about this. Now, for me, I have an easier time being a little bit non-anxious in the presence of what seem like small calamities, partly because I've, walked through this so many times with families, but also because my background was really tough, but didn't end up leaving me broken. I guess it left me a tad emboldened in that my father's an alcoholic, eventually drank himself to death. My mother was mentally ill. I spent a good 3 months of 7th grade in a pediatric psychiatric hospital with depression. I wouldn't want to do that again. It wasn't a glorious time of my life, but I got through this with support. And when we talk about resilience, it's the experience of dealing with things with help, the experience of dealing with things that are difficult that wires the brain to think, I can deal with things that are difficult. The problem that we as parents have is that when we don't want to see our kids suffer. It's in our genes, it's in our wiring. And we want to jump in and save kids. And they're grateful as all get out. And we feel like, I put on the cape, I'm super mom, I've saved everything. Right? But it makes kids safe. It doesn't help them feel brave.
Yeah.
So one thing is if you are a parent, obviously this being non-anxious person, some people it's just the way they're wired and some people are more fretful. But if you are more fretful or more anxious, one thing that can be helpful is to verbalize, just to kind of talk out loud the things that you're upset about. But here's how I think I can deal with this, right? Because our kids learn so much more by watching us, even if it's kind of self-consciously, model things than by our sort of talking at them. So if you say, gosh, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I said something the other day to this guy, Ned, and I think I might have said it the wrong way. But now that I think about it, it probably isn't fair for me to think that I never make a mistake, right? That if I talk to someone for an hour, that I don't say anything that isn't the perfect words, and he's a big boy too, and I'm sure he can probably get over it, right? And you kind of model that for your kids to realize you can make mistakes, you can upset people, you can upset your friends. And we learn to get past that. So that's one suggestion anyway.
I love that. Mistakes are wonderful opportunities to learn.
Yes, they are. And I love the modeling of it too, and really talking through the issues. Cause I feel like I model to some extent, but I like the modeling of the simple mistakes, like thinking that you said something wrong and it's okay that you said something wrong. Like how many times do we hear that as kids? Like our parents go through the process of, saying something that might have offended someone or just making a mistake at work and knowing that you can get past it, and modeling that resilience is so important.
It's so easy. It's funny. I have a former colleague who was just frankly really perfectionistic, right? And she was so undone when she would make mistakes, right? And then she'd always kind of dodge and weave and sort of mistakes were made as opposed to my bad. I didn't handle that well. And it's I make mistakes left, right, and center, but I'm also awfully good at saying, my bad. I screwed that up. I'm sorry. And it's so much less, for me, it's so much less stressful knowing that because I can apologize well, I don't have to be as afraid of making mistakes, right? It's a friend said it's easier to put on slippers than it is to carpet the world, right? So to run around thinking you're going to be perfect all the time, that's kind of a tall order.
Yeah. And you wouldn't want people expecting perfection out of you 24/7.
No.
So why would you want that kind of pressure on your children?
And, your point about, parents trying to be perfect is such a good one. I sometimes throw my wife under the bus because I have this wonderful wife who is sort of breathtakingly competent in every way, almost to the point that it's annoying, except she does have an Achilles heel. She can't skate. So my wife, Vanessa, on skates is like Bambi on ice. So thank goodness she has some big imperfection. But this goes back years ago where I shared with her, there's probably value to her, even if it's a little bit on purpose, to let down her guard and let our kids see where she struggles and bobbles and is trying to figure this out as well. Because particularly for little guys, and probably most of all for girls going through middle school, they can look at moms like they're parthenogenic, right? It's Athena popping fully formed from the brow of Zeus, perfect in every way, brilliant and brilliant, blah, blah. And of course, we know that we all went through middle school and, please burn those pictures. And we know that we were awkward and had braces and didn't deal well with boys or girls or whatever. But our kids don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I think for us to just be real, to be more open about it, I tend to overshare a little bit, but I think it's probably better to overshare a little bit than to undershare. So our kids kind of know what's going on inside our heads. Oh, because I was saying before that the non-anxious presence, if you're having a hard time and you're upset, the one thing that I think is really to be cautioned against is to act like things are fine when they're not. So if your kid is upset or you're upset, and you're like, don't worry, sweetheart, it'll be fine, right?
They can tell.
Right? They can tell,
you're lying, you liar.
Right. So do they believe what their brains are telling them, or do they believe what their ears are telling them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's things called mirror neurons in the front of the prefrontal cortex, even if it's not as dramatic as what I just said. And if your brow is furrowed and your eyes narrow and you smile with only your mouth but not your eyes, your kids know that, right? And so then they must be thinking, oh gosh, what's mom really not telling me? Oh, this must be really bad because it doesn't feel like that's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always have problems with the advice I see out there. And I've seen it given to people with very large audiences that during stressful situations, it is your job as a parent to keep it together for your kid and not give them all the details of it and not let them know what's going on to make them feel safe. And I just feel that that's first, it's dishonest. I feel like kids could see right through that. And that as an anxious child myself, I knew when my parents were upset with something.
Right.
There's a difference between the things that are age appropriate that your child can handle, knowing the full degree of the details.
Yeah.
And the things that they're not able then to handle the full degree of the details of. So I had an instance too, going back a few years ago where something happened in my family and I didn't tell my kids the whole story, and I told them what they could handle at that age. To this day, my daughter still throws it back to me of like, yeah, remember when you lied to me about that? And I'm all like, I told you what you could handle. But I mean, yeah, you have to be open and honest because they know us. They know all of our tells. They've been around us their whole lives, and especially the little ones, they are excellent at body language. They are excellent at reading cues.
Yeah. And I also think, you can give kids what you think is the information. Say, does that answer your question? Do you want to know? Do you want to know more? Right. I had a story in the book. I had a kid who was doing this test prep with, and her parents shared with me that mom had breast cancer. And so this kind of, dropped a, grenade right in the middle of their life. She said, "Oh, but don't tell Sylvia. Don't let her know." Oh, and I'm like, she already knows. She doesn't know, but she knows it's something profoundly wrong. And because when they didn't share that information with her, she's just sitting there on pins and needles going, something's really bad, as opposed to by bringing her in, she could become part of the solution, right? I can't help mom medically, but gosh, maybe I'll find a way that I can cook dinner. I remember years ago, I had this kid who was an incredibly complicated child and super, super, super anxious. And we were doing all this test prep. And for reasons I don't understand, we had a power outage right in the middle of our session. And it's like a Thursday afternoon at 4:00, not a cloud in the sky. So how the power went out, who knows? So we go outside and we sit, but the sun was going around the corner, so we weren't getting enough light in my office. So we went outside and sat. It was a beautiful fall day, sitting on the bench. And so sitting on the bench, this car drive by, and one car, somebody didn't obey the stop sign, whatever. One guy beeps at another, and she kind of does this, and like, let it go. And then 5 minutes later, a fire truck comes down the hill with a big thing. And again, she must jump 2 feet out of the seat. And she said, "I'm sorry, I'm just really stressed." I'm like, yeah, I can tell.
Some of us, though, unfortunately, have that really high, I can be really, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh. People can scare me so easily. Jumpy.
Yeah, like a startle reflex.
There we go, startle. I'm like, why am I missing that word?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, we go back to the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala business, right? Everyone has a stress response. And it's just that typically for people who are anxious, it's more highly tuned and it's more intense, right? So if you think of this as a smoke detector, right? The smoke detector that's in the ICU, if someone lights a match, you want that thing to go off. Otherwise, we're blowing up everyone's grandma who's on oxygen, right? If you're the smoke detector in a commercial kitchen, forget the dinner on fire. You want a person to be on fire because, otherwise no one would ever get fed, right? Because there's so much smoke in there. So, we don't want to, different people have different settings in terms of how much they respond to perceived threat. And the good news is we're frankly better off if some people are really reactive and some people are less reactive, right? The firemen in the world who kind of run into fires, they have a much higher tolerance for a high level of stress. But the people who avoid fires probably are ones who are much more, kind of hyper vigilant and avoiding those problems.
Yeah,
those are probably the moms. Put those matches down.
Well, and I feel like it's different for like every sort of scenario too, because you say like the firefighter, like for me, when I was a teacher in the classroom and 30 kids like who are loud, like I think I had a heightened level of noise that I was comfortable with. Versus like when we had Girl Scout meetings here in the house and it was like 8 girls, I'm like, I'm fine. And like moms would come in and be like, what is this?
It's so loud and crazy. And Joanne's looking around going like, what?
They're good.
Yeah.
They're good.
And I'm sure that goes back to your skills and your experience and the perceived sense of control, right? That I've done this before. I know how to handle this. It's okay if these kids are being noisy. 30 kids are running around like crazy. They're just blowing off steam. And I'll give them about another 7 minutes and then we'll settle down and we'll do book time or whatever it happens to be, where other parents are like, oh,
yeah. That's interesting because I have seen other parents have like that reflex where if a kid is like too loud or if they're playing kind of noisy, they're like quick to be like, okay, be quiet there. So like every single like direction is telling the kid to like settle down and da-da-da. And it must go back to that, what they're comfortable with or what they perceive as.
Yep. And it's funny. There was there's a story in the book about a parent who like most moms, was a little bit more on top of things, more fully developed executive functions than her teenage boy, right? And I perhaps unhelpfully pointed out, that the way that she's looking at it, it's probably been a long while since she had the brain of a teenage boy, right? But she says, but it just kills me to waste and watch so much time. And I maybe helpfully, maybe unhelpfully said, my advice, just don't watch, right? Because you can't make kids want what they don't want, right? You can't make them not want what they do want, right? And, from a performance perspective, there's some people who take almost no stress to jump on and get on things. And other people need a ton of pressure. And this is why a lot of people, especially boys and men, are much more apt to procrastinate because they need that stress at the end to get higher activation to finally engage. And so a lot of times parents lose their minds, an hour or a day or maybe a week before the kid faces the pressure himself.
Oh yeah,
So I'm like, step away, don't watch. If it's going to be a train wreck, it ain't. One of the things we talk about in our book is to keep asking ourselves, whose problem is it?
My son is playing a game right now on his computer where he's a thief and the cops are after him. So I'm so excited about this new app, Give As We Grow, where instead of being the quote unquote bad guys, kids are practicing giving back.
That is so cool, Joanne. I really wish that there was something like this when my kids were younger that got them excited about giving back to others and helped them build a better understanding of what it really means to volunteer.
Give As We Grow is the first of its kind free educational mobile app for children ages 8 to 11 that teaches kids via fun, service-focused minigame quests to tap into their unique talents and interests to help others.
And did you know that studies show that there is a biological connection between generosity and happiness, and that volunteering improves people's physical and mental health? I mean, kids who volunteer typically do better in school and are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. And that is something that I think we all want for our kids.
Ready to spark a new movement in generosity? Find and download Give As We Grow for free in the App Store for Android and iOS. And for resources for the whole family, visit giveaswegrow.org. We're hitting that time of year where my brain gets so overloaded in December that I look for anything to make life easier. And I have to say, Brie, that Green Chef is one of those services.
Yes, Green Chef is there to take away the dreaded, oh my goodness, what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? You can eat clean all holiday long with over 80 weekly meal options each week, featuring things like quick and easy, protein-packed, calorie-smart, or my personal favorite, the keto options.
And you don't have to lose track of healthy eating habits during the holidays because every Green Chef customer gets a free session with one of their registered dietitians who can walk you through how to make clean eating work for you, which is very cool.
And I have to say that I have been loving their recipes lately. They put things together I have never thought of. This week, we're trying the lemon basil caper pork with sauteed cauliflower, bell peppers, almonds, and feta cheese, my favorite. Their recipes make it so easy to support my wellness goals without skipping on flavor.
For Green Chef's best deal of the year, get $250 off with code NGM250 at greenchef.com/NGM250. That's greenchef.com/NGM250. And don't forget to use that code NGM250 to get $250 off.
Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well.
Yes.
It cannot be any parent's responsibility to make her kid or make his kid do his homework, because how could it be your responsibility to do something that's impossible? Because if your kid fundamentally didn't want to do it, he would close his eyes, put his hands fly flat on the floor, cover his ears and go, la, la, la. You're going to peel him off the floor. You're going to duct tape him with a chair, a pen. I mean, no, right?
Yeah,
right.
no.
Clockwork Orange and peel those eyes open.
Right.
It's not possible. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So this is why we talk about trying to change the energy from being a manager, which is a thankless job, to being a consultant who are massively overpaid relative to what they do, right?
Well,
yeah, massively. That'd be awesome. Now, homework is one of those things like I'm really passionate about, like as a former teacher. And that's what we do through No Guilt Mom too. Like I wrote a book called Drama Free Homework about helping parents release
release that pressure.
Yeah, changing the mindset.
Changing the mindset, being more of that consultant rather than the manager. And I love what you said about the procrastinating, about how some kids and they need that procrastination and that stress to really trigger them to performance, because it just clicked exactly like what my son is doing. He's in second grade and he likes to leave his homework till the morning. And that was something that freaked me out at first. I'm like, oh my gosh. And even last night I was like cuddling him in bed and saying goodnight to him. He's like, Mom, I didn't do my homework. And I'm like, well, it'll happen in the morning. And then this morning, bam, right on it. Didn't have to like tell him anything because he felt that stress and that pressure.
Yeah.
So,
and in those situations, you can ask, does it bother you? Would you like me to help you get it done earlier? Would you like me to help you? Because again, I think a lot of times people think that if you are, if you're stepping away, right? If you're stepping away, they're just saying it's on you, kid, totally laissez-faire, like, do whatever the heck you want. And we're not talking about that at all. We're talking about sort of, instead of standing behind your kid, pushing him, you're standing beside him saying, is there a way that I can help? There's a story in the book. My son, when he was in maybe 6th grade, we got a note from the teacher saying, I've noticed that Matthew's showing up at school unprepared for math, and he's doing his math at the last possible moment, and it seems to be stressing out. Do you think you can make him get his homework done at home? And I wrote back, and I said, well, what you're seeing is the natural ramification of a kid who's procrastinating, right? My wife and I have made a concerted effort that this is his work, and we offer help, and we're here to help him in any way he wants, because we can still both do 6th grade math. But we're not going to make it our responsibility for him to do his work. If you have, as a 6th grade teacher with a lot of experience, if you have specific advice that you think would help him or you would give to us, we would love to hear it. But for our perspective, if he's showing up late and he's a little bit stressed, that's perfectly fine, because it's a natural consequence for him of being late. And we're not upset. Nobody has to be upset. If he's a little stressed, he's the one who should be stressed. I shouldn't be stressed. It's not my work.
Yep. That's a great point, that it's the kid's stress. It is not the parent's stress.
And he's the one that's going to realize, oh, I don't like this feeling. Maybe I'm going to switch something up, And
here's something that kids do a ton. That many kids are really clever at figuring out how to outsource the stress from them to their parents. So here's an example.
Really?
So my daughter's a junior, and you'd have to think about, what's age appropriate, age 4, 6, 10, whatever. And so my daughter said, so she's distance learning, and she doesn't like this one teacher. She said, do I have to go to class today? And I said to her, obviously I can't make you go to class. I got my own stuff. I can't make you. I said, but I also can't say that you don't have to go to class, because I don't know what you're learning. I don't know how important it is to you, and I'm not your teacher. So I can't say that you don't have to go to class. And she gives me one of these faces. And she said, that was not the answer I was looking for. I said, let me guess here. So my guess is you were hoping that I would say, it's fine for you to not go to school. That way you wouldn't have to feel guilty about not going to class. And she's like, yeah. And so you can imagine, do I have to go to Tony's birthday party? And if you say, well, yeah, you have to, because we promised we would. Now you're the bad guy. If you say you don't have to go and Tony yells at him, right, then, well, my mom said he didn't have to go. He's taken his problem, or my daughter's taken her, and made it the parent's problem. And so this is where it's kind of a principle of nonviolent resistance. Say, well, obviously I can't make you. Here's what I'll do. Here's what I'll not do.
Yeah. I like that. My daughter tries that a lot with me. I think I'm going to have to try that I'm going to call it my little Jedi mind trick, where I'm going to be like, what I'm guessing you want me to say is da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
And then I'll get that face too. I'll get that.
Kid I'm doing all this test prep stuff, and she was a senior in high school, and it was her last test, right? And so the test was maybe 2 weeks from now. And so there was a practice. So we was basically doing her last practice test before she took the real test. And she's, but there's this great party, and she says, can I go to the party? Right. And her mom launches into, we've spent so much time, you spent so much money, you want to do well on this. And I said, you totally fell into that trap. Where you say, obviously, I can't lock you up, right? It's your test. It's your college. You're the one who's put all this hard work in. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think you can go to this party tonight and still do as well as you want on that practice test tomorrow? Or do you think maybe you should let the party go so that you're better positioned to do as well as you want tomorrow? What do you think? And you don't answer the question that's being asked of you, right? Like any good politician.
Oh, you know what? Through this talk, I've realized that I have been, my son has been doing this to me, but in a very, very roundabout way. Like
knowledge is power.
Oh my God.
Knowledge is power.
Except he does it so roundabout. Like, I don't know how to handle it. So maybe you'll have some insight on this. It's like, he will ask for something to be bought. For example, he wanted us to buy Nutri-Grain bars. And, we're like, okay. And he's kind of a picky eater. So we buy this box of Nutri-Grain bars and he tastes one and he doesn't like it. And then he's like, but you guys spent so much money on them. Like, I feel so bad. And my response is like, no, it's okay. We didn't spend too much money on it. But then he does it again with like a different thing, or like a water bottle. Oh, it spent so much money. Like, I can't believe I made this bad decision. And it's like putting all on him. But then I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah,
like,
he's putting on you to exculpate him, right? He's putting on you to make it go away.
He is.
I'm suffering.
Yeah, don't let me suffer, right? And we as parents are so inclined to rescue our kids and make that go away because it feels good, right? And so and that's the kind of the non-anxious presence, is sort of dealing with being comfortable with our own distress and our kids' distress. Because there have been like 14 million books written in the last 10 years about resilience, right? And what resilience really is the ability to tolerate stress. And so you simply do not develop the ability to tolerate stress without having stress. So if he says, I feel so bad, you spent, $5 on these things and I really don't like it. Yeah, that's true. What do you think what do you think are the options are?
Right? I love that.
It's going to be my plan of attack.
I love that because like what you just said, you can't build your resilience to stress without having stress. It's like nobody would expect you to be able to play baseball without having to actually play baseball.
Yeah. And now I'm seeing something else. Like I see when my son gets really stressed, I immediately think like, oh my gosh, he's showing signs of anxiety. And I try to calm him down. Whereas now I am going to take a different tactic and be like, yes, that is an interesting problem. How do you think we should solve that?
There's an incredible article I recommend you maybe put it out to your folks, written by Kate Julian, who's a writer and editor for The Atlantic. It was the May cover issue of The Atlantic. And of course, it got no traction because we were, this virus thing. Anyway, it was parenting. It was parenting during the age of anxiety, something like this.
Okay.
And one of the coolest things that I saw, this is new to me, there's a program called SPACE. And it's supporting parents of anxious childhood emotions or something like that. A guy named Eli Leibowitz, who's up at Yale. Mm. He talks about the dance that happens with when children are anxious is their parents constantly try to accommodate them. They try to make the stress go away. But over time, it gets worse and worse and worse. So he tells a story about some family, a kid was a super picky eater, right? And they accommodated to the point that this boy, whose name I can't remember, had something like 7,000 meals of turkey loaf. Morning, noon, and night turkey loaf, because it wasn't worth the fight on any given meal. Oh God, just give him the turkey loaf. I just can't deal with this, right? But over time, so the problem is avoiding the dominant manifestation of anxiety is avoidance. That's how you can tell if people are anxious. They avoid the thing that makes them anxious. And the only way to undo that is to face the thing that makes you anxious. Now, this isn't, throw them in the deep end of the pool kind of stuff, because that leads to trauma. But it's doing it with support and with coaxing and sometimes even with rewards. I'm not a big external motivator kind of guy, as you can imagine, but doing it with support so that they can sit there and develop tolerance of stress. So, Mick, if I were afraid of the dark, right? I say, please turn the lights on. Thank goodness. And all the stress goes away. But I've actually left darkness at the peak of my intensity. And so it's actually deepened my fear of the dark. Where what you could do is say, well, hold up, Ned, hold up. Wait, I'm coming right over. And you sit there with me and you hold my hand and I stay there in the presence of the thing that's stressful until my stress response comes back down until it normalizes. And this is what tells my brain, it's not an existential threat. It's not the end of the world. I'm not going to die. So the SPACE program is really, it's great. They found that parents who had the specific type of treatment, their children's anxiety decreased as much as if the children themselves had done cognitive behavioral therapy. Nothing was done for the children. It was only for the parents, because we as parents we remove distress from kids because it's distressing to us for them to be in distress.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah.
Yep.
And that goes back to the guilt thing. You feel terrible let your kids suffer. And you're like, well, short term, yes. Long term, no.
Exactly. That short term versus long term.
My mind's blown. Like, I'm like,
you're trying to pick up the pieces right now. Hold on, I gotta put them back together.
No, it's so good. Like, I'm thinking like everything that's going on, especially the fire drills, and when when I was a camp counselor, for instance, I had a camper who was scared of fireworks, and they had a fireworks show at this camp. And so every fireworks, they tried to find like this soundproof room for her so that she could stay in the soundproof room.
Yeah.
And someone had to stay there with her. So this one makes so much more sense, because how are you ever going to deal with that unless you build up the tolerance for it?
And part of it is visualizing too. Is you can play these scenarios. And this is what people do when they do CBT with exposure therapies. That you first spend all this time rehearsing in this situation. How does it feel? What can you do? Right. And so this is really important. You ask your kids. Lisa DeMore talks about this in Under Pressure, where kids upset about something, and you're empathetic. You say, I can see how hard that is. What do you think we can do here? I have no idea. Well, let's just sit here and let's think about some options. What we as parents tend to do, or teachers or camp counselors, is give the kid, here's the solution. But then the problem is the kid will get the message, that the lived experience, that the solution to her problems don't reside within her. They reside within someone else, right? And so we so often want to give the kid this, that, the other, as opposed to, well, let's think about this. And if they can, let's come up with 10 ideas. Okay, take a banana. That's and it's sort of like with brainstorming, right? You come up with 20 ideas. You don't judge any of them. They can be the most terrible things in the world. But that process of looking for solutions, right? And this is what I do with test prep, right? If the first way doesn't work, you're screwed. No, that's not true, right? If the first way doesn't work, can you do this? 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 Right? I have, with students, I have this former colleague who used to, the WWJD, he would have kids write down WWRD. What would Rob do? What would Rob do, right? And so they were just practicing, different ways of approaching the problem so they don't get stuck.
I think that's a great idea.
That is excellent. And oh my gosh, all of the stuff you have shared with us, and again, totally mind blown. Amazing. What are you working on right now that you're excited about?
Oh man, Bill and I are working on a second book. Oh yeah, with a working title of What Do You Say? And the idea was, the book has been well received, and a lot of people are reading it. But a lot of times, folks come back. I love the science; it makes sense to me. The stories are helpful. But in this moment, kind of give me the words, right? What do I say? And so there are chapters of how to talk to your kids to establish empathy. How do you talk to your kids to motivate change? How do you talk to your kids to create inner drive? How to talk to your kids about the pursuit of happiness, right? And so these different kind of things. And so it's a combination of both a how-to, of kind of what's language that's more effective, and also very purposeful about what are we actually trying to convey to kids. Because right now, if you ask, there's an article that we'll probably put out next year, that for high school juniors, if you ask them, what do people my age ask them? How's school? Where are you going to college? What's your SAT? Maybe, do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? As though that is the sum total of the thoughts of high school, juniors and seniors. What do you think about the world today? Who's, politics, what are you into? What do you like to do outside of school? Blah, blah, blah. And so, we ask these very narrowing questions, and then we're surprised that kids are obsessed about grades and test scores in college. Their constant message for 10 years is
You're right.
grades in college, right? So ask them about anything else but that, right? Because they have rich inner lives just like we do.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
I
cannot wait for that book.
I'm excited.
I'm very excited for that.
It's fun to write.
Where can people find you?
Well, let's see here. So we have a website, selfdrivenchild.com. We actually have a Facebook group as well that people can join, and we kind of hang out every Friday and do Facebook Live events. I'm on Twitter at Ned Johnson. I kind of mix test prep stuff and parenting stuff, and go back and forth with the fabulous Jess Leahy, and it's all fun.
Yay. Very fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been amazing.
It's been a wealth of knowledge.
Well, thanks for having me. You guys are terrific. You clearly are having fun doing what you're doing, which is so awesome, because ultimately that's what we want as parents, right? Is to have fun as parents. Perfect? No, that's never the goal. But, you know, a little more laughter and a lot of love goes a heck of a long way to make a bunch of other stuff just, you know, flow right under the bridge.
I'll throw into that, like, you know, what are the best stories when your family gets together? They're the stories of the complete and utter failures, not the perfect times.
No.
It's so true.
Remember that time you missed the exit and you kept driving around in a circle for like half an hour because you kept missing the exit?
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting, you know, because the great insights of learning, and you know this as a teacher, Joanne, the great insights come from unexpected success or unexpected failure, right? Mm-hmm. And so we don't want to run away from things. Well, that was a hot mess. People used to ask me, so why are you better as a tutor than other people? And I used to say, because I've had more people fail with me. You know, and they looked at me like, what is your problem? You know, seriously, because, you know, pick a way to screw up and I probably seen it or if not caused it, right? And you go, oh, right. So, you know, and that's, you know, and that's what, you know, what's the expression that, you know, wisdom comes from experience and experience comes from bad decisions.
Yes.
Couldn't agree more.
Exactly.
Couldn't agree more.
100% there. That's parenting in a nutshell too.
Well, thanks so much, Ned. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
So as we said in the intro, that was a fun interview.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Not only was it just hilarious in all of the lovely little challenges that were thrown before us during that whole interview, but just the information. Like, I love talking to him. Ned is awesome.
Ned is awesome. He belongs in our No Guilt Mom, like, super crew.
He does. Yes. He does. Like, there were so many things in there that I loved. Especially so many amazing nuggets that I'm like, of course, like talking about how we can't perform well when we're stressed. Mm-hmm. Like, I can barely even put together a sentence, let alone take a test or do high level thinking.
Stress like shuts down areas of your brain. It's like why people get test anxiety.
Right.
When they just forget everything they know because stress is like, no, not today, brain.
Yep. See, and again, like mine makes it so that putting words together, what? Complete thoughts? No. And then also talking about the non-anxious parent, we both were.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the non-anxious parenting presence, I really took to heart because we did this interview a month ago and I've had time to like pretend to be a non-anxious parent or at least try to exude that because
to aim in that general direction.
Yeah, some things I do, like my son, he just learned how to ride a bike right before summer and he was riding a bike everywhere. And then around the summer months, he stopped because
it's hot. It's
Arizona.
Phoenix. Right?
Yes. And then he was afraid to get back on a bike again. Well, every time that we went to the park, he would get on his bike with me and he'd be like, I can't do it. And like that immediately, like when our children have stress, like we feel it too. Mm-hmm. We feel it deeply. And with me, I was saying, okay, no, you can do it. Let's try it again. And he would push back so hard that I'm like, okay, well, we're obviously not in a state where we can work on this bike riding. So let's quit for today. Let's try again tomorrow. And we tried again tomorrow, again the next day, then the next day. I couldn't get him on that bike. My husband goes out one time and gets my son on the bike. And the only thing that I can think is that he was totally not anxious about it. Like my son's reaction didn't have the same effect on him as it did on me, or at least he didn't let it have the same effect on him as it did on me. And I think that kids can sense when we are anxious about something.
Oh, I 100% believe that. And I know I have personally no poker face.
Yeah, like, I don't have a poker face either.
Right? Like I walk in and you'll be like, oh,
you're like, what's wrong?
Yeah. You can just tell.
I'm like that too. And well, like Josh says that it's like the best thing about me because he can always tell what I'm feeling.
True.
I can't hide it.
In some cases, it's really good. But in other cases, when we're trying to like be brave for our kids, it's a little hard, right?
It is a little hard. Like I think people need to give lessons to parents about how to be non-anxious and like not let your feelings show so much. But at the same time, I am all for talking about feelings and showing feelings. So it's really just a balance.
It is. It is. And I think everything like that in life, I mean, everything in life is like that, especially when it comes to parenting. It's about a balance. There is no one thing you can do perfectly 24/7. There's going to be a little bit of this and a little bit of that at all times.
Yeah.
So another amazing thing that I remember him talking about was like not saving your kids. You can't be super mom.
You can't be super mom.
As much as we want to save them from the disappointment, we want to save them from failure. We want to save them from the humiliation, the pain, whatever it is.
Yeah,
we're not helping them.
No. Yeah. And it's so funny because I was just reading a book last night and it was describing how the best way to stop saving your kids is to make them order for themselves when they go out to eat.
Ooh.
Because you know how kids tend to mumble and be very inarticulate and like the wait staff is like, no, like they're like, what did you say? Like, excuse me? Like, and the kid has to say it over and over again. And then usually as a parent, that's when you step in and be like, he'll have the cheeseburger. Well, this book suggests that no, just let them stumble. They just have to say it over again until they're articulate and people can understand.
That's a really great idea. And you know what's funny is now listening to that, I've always, well, not always, for the most part, I try to have my kids do that all the time. But I do one thing that probably like sabotages it. Before they order, I will say to them, speak clearly and look at the waiter in the eye.
See, I think that's just teaching manners, though.
I hope. But I'm thinking to myself right there, though, then and the reason I'm doing it really isn't, I do at the end. I look at them and go, did you say thank you? And that's the manner part. But I think when I'm doing it though, I'm already like anticipating what their problem is going to be.
Oh.
And so I'm telling them how to fix it before it happens. So I'm like, right? Yeah, I'm not letting them like
interesting experiment then.
Yes,
back off on it and see what they do.
I am, but then that also means that we need to be able to go to restaurants again.
I know. You can't really practice that skill right now, unfortunately.
Not right now with everything going on with COVID still, but maybe in the near future.
Maybe you can go to the Starbucks drive-thru and have them order through the back window.
I do make my daughter do that because her drinks are far too complicated. like once you have more than 2 directions on your drink, I'm out. Peace out. I'm done. And so I make her yell over me from the passenger seat. She gets so mad because she's 12.
It's like, if you want a frappuccino, you better say it.
Yeah. And then like she doesn't. And it's funny too when it comes to Starbucks because, they have somebody with the video cameras.
Yes.
And she's like, but they can see me, Mom. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. You have to learn how to talk to strangers. It's how it is.
Yes, we're so good at making our kids learn. Well, hopefully you guys really enjoyed this episode as much as we did. And so much so that you will go and review our podcast.
Please, please leave us a 1 to 2 sentence review if you have a few minutes. We greatly appreciate it. And it helps other parents find the podcast as well. And give us a star rating. We hope that we've earned your 5 stars.
Yes.
And if we haven't, please let us know at hello@noguiltmom.com and tell us how we can improve.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? And if you have any suggestions on a topic or a guest you would like to see or hear on the podcast, let us know. We love to hear from our listeners. So
yes. So until next time, the best mom's a happy mom. Take care of you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for stopping by. Are you looking for something to listen to with your whole family? Then check out 6 Minutes, produced and created by Gen Z Media. With over 200 twisty, cliffhanger-filled episodes, 6 Minutes tells the story of 11-year-old Holiday who is pulled from the icy waters with no memory of who she is or where she came from.
3 years ago, Brinley Pasternak helped the Anders family uncover the truth about Holiday's past. Now she'll need them to help her find the truth about hers. In 6 Minutes Out of Time, the long-awaited sequel, Cyrus Anders is found unconscious near the mysterious Elixir Academy in Florida, and Brinley learns the school may have a shocking connection to her missing mother.
Dive in now and get the most downloaded family audio adventure in history. Follow 6 Minutes wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen early and ad-free with the GZM family subscription.